My name is Trisha Tidwell, and this is Typhoid Mary, Captive to the Public's Health by Judith Walzer Levitt. In the 19th century, urbanites faced with increasing sanitation crises and devastating epidemics began demanding a more systematic approach to disease control. Much of the work early in the century rested on the prevailing medical theory that dirt caused disease and emphasized keeping the city environment clean. The so-called filth theory of disease posited in a very general sense that undifferentiated urban pollution deriving from waste material from the horses, cows, and pigs that roam freely around America's burgeoning cities and other rotting organic refuse and garbage left uncollected on city streets caused bad air or miasmas, which could lead to disease. In response to this perceived health reason to clean up the environment, health officers developed large-scale sanitation projects to bring clean water into the cities and allow efficient sewage disposal and garbage collection and disposal. In addition, 19th century health departments operated vaccination programs, isolation hospitals, and dispensaries to help bring health to urban residents. Many scientists believe that Mary Malone's apprehension in 1907 was a momentous event, one in which the new science of bacteriology played a heroic role. They championed bacteriology's new function in streamlining the efforts of the health department by reducing the attack on typhoid to those individuals who could be identified by laboratory methods as dangerous. Malone's example demonstrated the vital importance of the laboratory as a supplement to or even a substitute for physical examinations. The laboratory would help the health department get people like Mary Malone off the streets and out of homes of healthy citizens. Scientists and health officials believed the new science would help protect the public's health in the best possible way. George Soper had been born and raised in New York City. He attended the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York, and returned to the city to attend Columbia University in sanitary engineering. He was well launched on a successful engineering career by the time the Thompsons hired him to investigate the Oyster Bay outbreak. He had already worked for the Boston Water Works and had successfully investigated typhoid fever outbreaks in Ithaca, New York, and other U.S. cities. Mary Malone's apprehension in March 1907 in the Park Avenue home in which she was then employed was dramatic. George Soper appeared without warning and explained to her that she was spreading disease and death through her cooking. It's my dog snoring. He wanted samples of her feces, urine, and blood to test them in the laboratory. The story seemed preposterous to the healthy Malone, who promptly threw him out of the house. Malone's response was not unreasonable in an era before the idea of a healthy carrier was known to the general public, and even before many in the medical profession understood it. Soper persevered. The city kept Malone in her isolation retreat for 2 years before she sued the health department for release in 1909. Her lawyers argued before the New York Supreme Court that she had never been sick and could not be the menace to society that the health department claimed. The judge, while voicing sympathy, sided with the health department and sent Mary Malone back to her island cottage. After another year of isolation, a new health commissioner released her on the promise that she would not cook again. Ultimately, she reneged on this agreement, and in 1950 the health authorities found her cooking at the Sloan Maternity Hospital, the site of an outbreak of 25 new cases of typhoid fever. Mary Malone was not permitted to work at a job that had sustained her, and she was not retrained for any comparable work. The New York City Health Commissioner, who had released her in 1910, helped her find a job in a laundry. However, it did not provide the wages or job satisfaction to which she had previously become accustomed, nor did it provide the social amenities, as limited as they were, of domestic work in the homes of New York's upper class. The Health Department, for all of the Commissioner's words of obligation to help her in 1910, did not provide her with long-term gainful employment. Neither did health officials, who precipitously locked Malone up, succeed in convincing Malone that her danger to the health of people for whom she cooked was real and lifelong. The medical arguments that carried weight among the elite at the time, and have become more broadly convincing since, did not resonate with her. There was no welfare system to support her. There was no viable safety net, practical or intellectual, for an unemployed, middle-aged Irish immigrant single woman. The resolve of the Health Department officials to isolate Mary Malone in 1915, when she was found cooking after having agreed not to, is easier to understand than their initial decision to send her to North Brother Island in 1907 before alternative strategies were tried. Their later decision was more in keeping with contemporary thinking that isolation should be used only as a last resort. Soper expressed common sentiment on the subject. Whatever rights she once possessed as the innocent victim of an infected condition were now lost. She was now a woman who could not claim innocence. She was known willfully and deliberately to have taken desperate chances with human life. She had abused her privilege. She had broken her parole. She was a dangerous character and must be treated accordingly. There are at least 3 issues basic to Mary Malone's story that present-day concerns echo and can help guide us in understanding the past as well as lead us into the future. The 3 are identification and labeling of new categories of people who challenge the public's health, the question of isolation and its potential threat to personal liberty, and the attribution of blame and responsibility for the spread of disease. Levitt states that identification as dangerous to the public health, especially when added to existent social vulnerability, is a label to avoid. Identification is not simply a benign act to promote medical understanding. It carries powerful social meaning and radically alters the world of the individual, especially the first ones to be labeled as so. Wherever we position ourselves, as individuals and as a society, we must come to terms with the fundamental issues we can blame, fear, reject, sympathize, and understand. Withal, we must decide what to do. Optimally, we search for responses that are humane to the sufferers and at the same time protect those who are still healthy. Mary Malone's and the stories of other individual sufferers and carriers demonstrate the need for policies that, when health needs and personal rights conflict, put the least restriction on individual lives compatible with protecting the public's health. The conflict between competing priorities of civil liberties and public health will not disappear, but we can work toward developing public health guidelines that recognize and respect the situation and point of view of individual sufferers.